Would you want to uncover family secrets even if they could harm your perception of your loved ones? The fluorescent lights overhead flickered erratically, casting sterile shadows over the cramped, cluttered meeting room where Ethan stood, his palms clammy, heart drumming an uneasy rhythm. The low hum of buzzing fluorescent fixtures mingled with whispered exchanges. The undercurrent of judgment in the air was thick and suffocating. Around him, faces turned, some impassive, others sharp with impatience as the final slide on the worn projector blinked out. He clenched his fists at his sides, trying to swallow the knot rising in his throat. Moments ago, they tore into his project, his labor, his hope for innovation and renewal in a town slowly rotting from neglect. Words like outdated, irrelevant, and worst of all, dead idea, slashed through him with surgical coldness. A sneer from his manager cut deeper than the verdict itself. "Ethan, this isn't the direction we're heading," the voice said flatly, echoing around the tight space. "We need fresh ideas, not recycled nostalgia." His chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to fight back, but his voice caught in the cracked throttle of defeat. The room's quiet smothered his protest before it even formed. Ethan's eyes flicked toward a dusty window behind the projector. Fog clung to the glass like a ghost's shroud, muting the world outside and suffusing the room with a gray, dreary light. Each blink felt heavy, as though the air itself dragged against his lids. The weight of failure settled like dust on every surface, coating his skin with an invisible film of humiliation. It was a slow, sinking sensation, the cold realization that the place he'd tried to carve as his sanctuary now viewed him as obsolete. He swallowed hard, a tight knot twisting inside his jaw. When the meeting disbanded, Ethan didn't move toward the water cooler or the half-hearted congratulations exchanged elsewhere. Instead, he straightened his jacket, shoulders stiff with brittle pride, and walked out into the dim hallway, the dull thud of his boots swallowed beneath the hum of indifferent conversation. The building's air was stale, thick with the scent of cheap coffee and lingering cigarette smoke. Echoless steps resounded in the narrow corridor as Ethan passed peeling posters of faded town festivals, reminders of better times overlooked and forgotten, much like himself. The muted sky outside seeped through grimy panes, staining the hall with washed-out gray that seemed endless. He let the heavy door swing shut behind him, the sharp click resonating in the silence, isolating him from the warmth and lamplit chatter inside. The chill bit into his skin as a stray wind whispered through the cracked doorway, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and aged stone, the familiar embrace of his cramped apartment a short walk away. Pulling his jacket tighter, Ethan's fingers brushed against the worn leather strap of his weathered satchel. Inside, tucked beneath layers of notebooks and forgotten sketchpads, lay a frayed photograph. It was folded carefully, a secret relic he had barely allowed himself to touch since it had surfaced months ago. He had yet to unravel its meaning fully, but something pulsed in its edge, a promise buried beneath tattered memories. He walked through the town's weary streets, neon signs flickering overhead, their garish hues painting his shadow onto crumbling facades and graffiti's streaked walls. The cafe with its chipped porcelain signs stood empty at this hour, windows fogged with decay and neglect. Its atmosphere echoed his own, both waiting quietly, yearning for renewal. At home, the apartment was dim and sparse. Dust lay thick on windowsills where morning light struggled to penetrate. Ethan dropped his satchel beside the battered sofa and sat heavily on its stained cushions. The muted hum of a distant television leaked from a neighbor's unit, contrasting with the aching silence pressing against the walls. His fingers finally found the frayed photograph on the windowsill, worn and faded, edges curling like leaves ready to fall away. The image showed his father, young and vibrant, standing beside a woman Ethan didn't recognize, her face blurred, shadowed with mystery. The photo's surface was mottled with specks of age, the colors warped and washed out, as if time itself had tried to erase its secrets. A long exhale escaped him, the tension in his shoulders melting into a lingering shame, confusion, and something else. A whisper of possibility, buried deep beneath the weight of rejection. Outside, The world remained muted, fog curling softly around cracked lampposts and weathered stone. Ethan's gaze lingered on the photograph, the frayed image drawing him into a labyrinth of questions he couldn't yet voice but already felt compelled to pursue. The silence settled in fully, a breath held in the stillness of a life on the edge of unraveling, a quiet moment suspended before the journey into forgotten truths began. The door closed behind Ethan with a hollow thud, sealing him in the muted solitude of his apartment. The weary familiarity washed over him, faded denim sofa sagging under the weight of forgotten promises, the peeling wallpaper that clung stubbornly to the age-stained walls, the muted glow of a street lamp casting hazy rectangles through grimy windows. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee and old books, a scent that seemed to trap moments long past. He slumped onto the sofa, every muscle taut with exhaustion and defeat. His fingers instinctively sought the frayed edge of the photograph tucked deep inside his jacket pocket, the texture raw against his skin, a fragment of a life barely acknowledged, yet holding the pulse of something unsaid. It was a relic, a secret testament to truths buried beneath years of silence. The room felt too small, constricting. The walls seemed to close in, stained with shadows that flickered across faded posters of concerts attended and dreams whispered in the dark. The low hum of the city beyond was distant, filtered through cracked panes and layers of apathy. Ethan's mind churned, rejection gnawing at him like a relentless tide. Every harsh word from work replayed with cruel clarity, igniting a spark of anger deep beneath his skin, yet it was tempered by self-doubt, the gnawing question of his own worth. He shivered, not from cold, but from the tremor of mounting uncertainty. The click of the apartment door startled him. He glanced up to see a worn leather jacket hanging on the back of a chair, jeans strewn carelessly on the floor, emblematic of the man trapped between resistance and surrender. His reflection caught in the cracked mirror across the room, a tall, lean silhouette, unkempt dark hair falling across sharp eyes shadowed with fatigue. The cynicism etched into his features both shielded and revealed a vulnerability he kept guarded, a yearning to break free from a life slipping into gray complacency. He pushed himself upright, moving toward the dusty windowsill where a layer of grime blurred the world outside. The street was awash of muted colors, forgotten cars, flickering neon signs, and vague figures moving like ghosts through the fog-drenched night. Close to the window, a broken watch, one of several scattered on the sill like casualties of lost time, glinted under the dim light. The shattered glass, a stark symbol mirrored in Ethan's own fractured sense of self. Time lost, moments slipped away, and with them, the dreams that had once burned bright. Frustration blossomed within him, a clenched fist trembling in silent protest. A brooding silence filled the space between his thoughts, oppressive and thick, until it was fractured by his own ragged breath and the faint shuffle of paper under his fingers. He rummaged through a battered glove compartment on the windowsill, eventually uncovering a crumpled envelope with a faint stamp, his father's handwriting curled delicately on the front, like a whisper from a past long ignored. The envelope trembled in his grip, an unspoken promise of answers or of deeper mysteries. Ethan hesitated, the weight of uncertain knowledge pressing upon him harder than the cold night air slipping through the cracked window. His eyes flicked once more over the broken timepieces, the frayed thread of his past woven in obscure shadows and faded photographs. A single breath, a silent resolve, the first thread of a long, winding path stretching ahead, illuminated faintly by the hesitant glow of a distant street lamp nestled in the fog. As the fractured light spilled upon the walls, Ethan allowed himself a slow, uncertain smile, a spark of something more than defeat, a glimpse of a journey just beginning to unfold. Rain whispered against the smudged windowpane, tracing fragile rivulets that blurred the world outside into impressionist swaths of gray and green. Ethan sat slouched on the worn edge of his bedspring, the dim halo of a bare bulb casting a pale light over the cluttered room. Dust motes hung suspended like ghosts caught in the lazy swirl of stagnant air, and the brooding weight of uncertainty pressed down around him like a second skin. His fingers trembled lightly as he reached toward the windowsill, where the frayed photograph waited patiently amidst the scattered debris of forgotten lives. The paper's edges were curled, softened by time and careless handling, the image faded but sharp enough to sting a frozen moment stolen from a past he barely knew. The aged faces of his father and a woman unfamiliar yet achingly present looked back at him, bound by secrets wrapped in whispers and shadows. Ethan's heartbeat skittered, the faint room noise swallowed by a suffocating swirl of questions clamoring for space in his mind. The photograph sat heavy in his hands, its surface rough and fragile, like the fractured thread of a story unraveling. He leaned closer, breath-catching as his eyes combed the details. The woman's smile shaded with shadow, the way the light fell across his father's distant gaze, hinting at a life untouched by explanation. In that moment, the dusty windowsill became a threshold and altar between the known and the mysterious, illuminated in the soft melancholy of twilight. A sudden, subtle sound snagged his attention, a creak from the floorboards, a hesitated sigh from the stale house air. The room seemed to lean in with him, as if holding its own breath against the pulse of discovery. Ethan's lips parted slightly, the faint exhale of revelation escaping into the quiet. Determination, fragile yet fierce, began to kindle amid the ashes of confusion and doubt. The frayed photo was not just an artifact, it was a catalyst, a spark illuminating hidden pathways etched into the past, beckoning him forward into territory fraught with uncertainties but thick with promise. He carefully folded the photograph, tracing the stained creases, and tucked it safely inside his leather jacket, a silent vow to pursue the shadows, to unearth the truths tangled beneath layers of family silence. The broken watches scattered like relics of lost time across the windowsill seemed suddenly alive with new meaning, their shattered dials a murmur of seconds lost and moments waiting to be reclaimed. Ethan rose slowly, the stiffness in his limbs matched by a swelling quiet confidence. The room, cloaked in twilight's softness, no longer felt like a tomb but a sanctum, a place where hidden stories could breathe, where the faded past might be rewritten through echoes of courage and curiosity. As he stepped toward the door, light caught the edge of a cracked mirror. His reflection mirrored back a man poised on the cusp of transformation, eyes sharp with resolve, jaw tight with unspoken promise. The leather jacket hung loosely over broad shoulders, bearing the weight of newfound purpose. Outside, the night thickened, fog rolling over the quiet streets, blurring the line between memory and mystery. Ethan stepped into the damp air, his breath a visible thread weaving through the cold mist. The frayed photo pressed close to his heart was a beacon, faint yet unyielding. In the distance, a clock tower chimed the hour, fragile sound rippling across abandoned rooftops and deserted alleys, a haunting reminder that time, though broken, moved inexorably onward. The city sighed around him, a sleeping beast stirred by a restless secret. Within Ethan, a resolve settled deep, quiet but unbreakable. He wouldn't let the past remain shrouded in shadows. He would follow the thread, unravel the tangle, reclaim the lost time. And beneath the muted glow of street lamps weighing heavy with rain, the journey toward buried truths began anew. Morning light seeped faintly through the thin, yellowed curtains, casting striped shadows on the worn floorboards. Ethan woke to the distant call of birds and the soft rustling of wind stirring dried leaves outside, a fragile symphony that stirred something dormant within him. The air was cool, tinged with the dampness of an early spring fog lingering over the small town's cracked sidewalks and neglected gardens. The familiar scent of weathered wood and cool earth drew him reluctantly to the window. His gaze settled on the frayed photograph still tucked carefully under the glass on his windowsill, where he had left it the night before. The dim light revealed new details, a fold here, a faded crease there that whispered of secrecy and memories long suppressed. For the first time in weeks, his fingers itched with an unspoken determination. This was more than an image. It was a key beckoning, a challenge to pierce the veil that shrouded his father's past. Ethan pulled on his faded leather jacket and stepped into the creeping mist that clung to the quiet streets. The town was waking slowly, shopkeepers wiping the grime from antiquated windows, the distant roar of a diesel truck breaking the stillness, and the faint aroma of brewing coffee trailing from a corner cafe. Yet beneath this everyday facade, shadows of forgotten stories lurked, waiting for his voice to stir them. His boots clicked against uneven cobblestones as he made his way to the town archives, a squat brick building entangled in ivy and neglect. The weighted silence of its interior pressed in immediately the scent of old paper, dust, and worn bindings wrapped around him like a shroud. The lone attendant, an elderly woman with tired eyes, nodded silently, her gaze both wary and unyielding. Ethan's fingers traced the spines of brittle ledgers and faded newspapers. The search was slow, methodical, fraught with dead ends and frustrating absences. But amidst the yellowed pages and worn margins, he unearthed references to the estate his father once owned, a mansion nestled in the fog-drenched outskirts, long abandoned and shrouded in whispered rumors of lost fortunes and vanished relatives. The documents hinted at legal disputes, withheld wills, and an executor whose name appeared repeatedly, but never with clarity or warmth. Each fragment deepened the mystery, pulling Ethan further into a labyrinth of half-truths and silences. As he closed the brittle files, a gust of wind rattled a loose window pane overhead, carrying with it the faint scent of lilacs and old smoke. The weight of the past settled heavy on his shoulders, but beneath the burden a flicker of something sharp and urgent ignited a fragile spark of purpose. Later, as dusk melted into night, Ethan stood beneath the wan glow of a street lamp outside a decrepit cafe. The nighttime chill seeped through his jacket, but it was no match for the restless energy fueling his thoughts. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number, cryptic and brief. "Look deeper. The truth is tangled." Ethan's brows knit together as he pocketed the device, the promise of unknown secrets scattering beneath the neon haze. The road ahead was tangled, shadowed. But the first steps had been taken. He inhaled the cool night air, feeling the tension in his muscles ebb just enough to allow the stirrings of hope, mingled with doubt. The town's ancient buildings loomed silently, watching as he turned his back to the shadows and moved into the unknown where family secrets promised discovery, peril, and perhaps, redemption. The flickering street lamp cast elongated shadows that intertwined with the mist, shaping a path blurred but beckoning. Ethan's silhouette faded into the embracing night, the frayed photograph burning quietly in his pocket, a beacon against the gathering darkness. Ethan stood rigid in the dim light of the old tea room, the air thick with the musk of worn leather, brewed coffee, and the faint undertone of something stale, secrets long steeped in silence. His eyes, sharp but weary, flicked across the faces seated at the faded wooden table. An aunt whose smile didn't reach her tired eyes, a cousin whose gaze darted nervously beneath a veil of forgotten grievances. The weight of unspoken history filled the room, pressing down like the fog outside, thick and suffocating. "Why now, Ethan?" His aunt's voice broke the fragile silence, brittle and guarded. "Digging up the past won't bring us peace." Her fingers twitched around a chipped teacup, knuckles whitening with restrained tension. "I'm not digging," Ethan replied quietly, the words edged with a mix of frustration and desperation. "I'm searching. For answers. For the man in this photo." He lifted the frayed image, edges curling at his fingertips, the faded faces ghostly in the low light. A cousin scoffed, a sharp sound that cut the room with resentment. "Some truths aren't meant to be found. You're shaking the foundation, Ethan. Do you want to lose what little family we have left?" Ethan clenched his jaw, the sting of their collective resistance igniting a defiant spark beneath the pain. "I need to understand. I need to know who he was beyond the silence and the shadows." His voice rose, tremulous but firm. The room seemed to contract with tension, breaths held and words unspoken forming a wall between them. Ethan's gaze fell to a cracked wristwatch lying on the table, its broken glass shimmering faintly, a relic he'd glimpsed before, imprisoned in dust and time. It was more than an object. It was a symbol of moments lost, of histories fractured and frozen, waiting for reckoning. Later, Deserted and silent streets greeted Ethan's solitary walk home. The mist wove through the street lamps, pooling in corners and along old brick walls. Each step echoed with a loneliness both chosen and imposed. The letters and papers gathered from the town archive rustled in his satchel, fragile lifelines tethered to a past shrouded in silence. He paused beneath a lone flickering streetlight, the faint glow illuminating his shadow stretching long across the cracked pavement. The crisp night air was sharp, clearing the fog in his mind even as storms brewed within. Questions tangled in his chest, precarious threads weaving confusion and hope. A message awaited him on his phone, anonymous and brief. Some doors open only when the right key is found. Don't stop now. Ethan's fingers trembled as he read the words. The shadows around him thickened as if listening, watching. Was this a promise or a threat? Back in his apartment, the photograph lay spread under the frail illumination of a desk lamp. Ethan traced the faint outlines again. Hi's father beside a woman whose eyes held secrets deeper than the miles and years between them. The temptation to look away warred with the growing fire to uncover every hidden fracture. The clock ticked relentlessly on a dusty wall, the broken hands mirroring the fractured hours of his sleep and peace. Ethan felt the fragile stirrings of courage and recklessness intertwined, each discovery pulling him further into a maze of family shadows and buried truths. The night deepened, wrapping the town in its velvet grip, but within Ethan, a restless flame flickered, fragile, yet refusing to be extinguished. Tomorrow promised no answers, only the uncertain journey ahead, tangled with risk, revelation, and the weight of a legacy waiting to be faced. The phone's softly blinking screen cast a pale glow on his determined face, a silent herald of secrets yet to come. The ancient wooden floor creaked beneath Ethan's feet as he stood in the dim, cavernous study of the forgotten estate, dust motes dancing like specters in the weak shafts of a dying afternoon sun. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and aged paper, a tangible weight pressing against his chest as if the house itself mourned forgotten secrets. Around him, time seemed suspended, broken watches and rusted keys scattered on cluttered shelves like the relics of a half-erased history. In his hands, an old, leather-bound diary trembled at its cover, scarred by years of neglect but somehow alive with the touch of hidden truths waiting to unravel. Ethan's fingers traced the faded golden script on its spine before he opened it, the crackling pages whispering beneath his careful gaze. Each word penned there by his father was a window into a life shrouded in shadows, far deeper than Ethan ever imagined. He read of hidden relationships, burdens born in silence, and a secret sibling born from love and loss, a fragment of the past deliberately kept from him all these years. His breath hitched as heartbreak and betrayal folded over each other. What he had longed for, clarity and connection, twisted suddenly into isolation and distrust. The very foundation of his family felt like sand slipping swiftly through his fingers. The room tilted as a profound solitude engulfed him, the frayed photo and broken watches tumbling through his memory like fragmented echoes. It wasn't merely about inheritance or estate anymore. It was a fractured identity, a mosaic of truth too profound to be denied yet too painful to fully embrace. A sudden noise shattered the fragile silence, a clatter from the far corner, where loose floorboards concealed a hidden compartment. Ethan's pulse quickened. He approached, heart pounding as he pried open the decaying wood to reveal a stack of letters tied in yellowed ribbon. His fingers shook as he unwound the bundle, each letter detailing whispered betrayals, clandestine meetings, and a hidden web linking his father with figures he had never heard of. The sharp sting of revelation cut through the room as the shadows deepened around him. One letter, marked with a faded seal, hinted at an impending family meeting, a clandestine pact binding those who regarded Ethan as an outsider. The painful truth crystallized. The conspiracy he had only sensed was real, insidious, and intimate. Overwhelmed, Ethan let the letters fall from his hands, their rustling echoing in the hushed study. The mounting weight of truth threatened to crush him, but amid the despair, a flicker of defiant clarity ignited. This was his story, his truth to claim or reject. As dusk bled into night outside, Ethan stared through the grimy window at the creeping fog rolling over the estate grounds, the world outside blurred and uncertain like the path ahead. His jaw clenched as he folded the diary shut, resolve hardening beneath the rising tide of pain. In the quiet twilight, a single crack in the leather of the diary's spine caught the fading light, mirroring the fracture in Ethan's world. Yet beyond the brokenness, a fragile promise shimmered, a beckoning toward uncharted discovery and the haunting possibility of redemption. The room fell back into silence with the closing of the old diary, sealing in the revelations, but not the questions that would soon force everything Ethan believed to shatter or transform. Outside, the night embraced the estate, and a single, distant clock began to toll slow, measured, marking the inexorable unraveling of a hidden past and the dawn of a journey that would redefine his future. The estate held its breath beneath a swollen, leaden sky. Rain trickled steadily against cracked stained glass, casting fragmented shadows onto the worn floor-splayed shards of color drowning in dull, water-streaked panes. Ethan sat alone in the vast, hollow study, the walls heavy with silence as oppressive as the fog swirling outside. His hands trembled slightly as they rested on an ancient oak desk, fingers tracing the grain, searching for anchor in the unforgiving weight of shattered truth. Around him, relics of a fractured lineage gathered, dust-broken watches without time, frayed photographs curled at edges, and piles of yellowing letters pierced by sharpened sorrow. The physical space mirrored the turmoil nesting deep within. The discovery of his father's secret diary had ruptured fragile veils, exposing not only unspoken histories but the existence of a sibling he had never imagined. Betrayal rose as a bitter tide, washing away the remaining trust he'd clung to. Conversations with family twisted into echoes of accusations and avoidance, tearing at the fragile seams that once held his identity intact. He thought of the executor, the cold-eyed guardian determined to conceal more than Rev Allen, antagonist cloaked in shadows, controlling the flow of information like a puppeteer tightening strings. Each stone turned led to more questions. Each truth unraveled deepened the chasm between past and present. Ethan's breath came shallow, chest tightening as the silence suffocated. Despair wrapped itself in the muting gray of the room, a tangible presence pressing down with the weight of lost moments and broken promises. Outside, thunder rumbled low, a distant drum echoing the storm in his soul. His gaze fell again upon the frayed photograph on the windowsill, the emblem of a missing puzzle piece, a glimpse of a past that felt both foreign and achingly close. The woman beside his father, her face half shrouded in shadow, became a haunting silhouette against his fading certainty. Words failed. There was only the cold embrace of isolation, the slow diminishing of hope into darkening rooms and colder nights. The slow decay of belonging, the fracturing of trust, birthed a despair so profound it consumed the edges of his world. Ethan's figure, tall and thin against the backdrop of fading light, seemed to dissolve into the shadows, swallowed by creeping darkness. A heavy sigh escaped, the sound small and fragile, nearly lost to the whistling wind. Time, broken and scattered like the shards of the antique watches, slipped irrevocably through his fingers. The moment stretched endless lithe edge of a fall he could no longer resist. In the quiet decay, with only the rain and his own ragged breath bearing witness, Ethan sat grasping at fragments of a legacy slipping away, his heart sinking into the abyss of unraveling truths. Rain drizzled silently against the grimy windowpane, the drops weaving streaks that blurred the faint glow of the street lamps beyond. Ethan sat slumped in the solitude of his dimly lit apartment, shadows clutching the corners of the room like silent mourners. The air was heavy and still, broken only by the soft tick of a neglected clock and his uneven breathing. It felt distant, like echoes within an empty cavern, each sound swallowed by the weight of his despair. His fingers trembled softly as they traced the cracked face of an old, broken watch resting on the dusty windowsill. The glass was fractured, spider-webbed like the fragile remnants of time he once believed in. Watching the second hand crawl and falter in its erratic dance mirrored his own crumbling grip on certainty and hope. Darkness pressed inward, seeping through the threadbare curtains and crawling over floorboards that creaked under the memory of footsteps long gone. He allowed himself to sink deeper into the worn armchair, the fabric coarse under trembling skin, the silence stretching thin and taut as a fragile canvas. Ethan's gaze drifted toward the walls, adorned with fading photographs and yellowed newspaper clippings, saw a collage of fragments from a truth splintered and scattered. The frayed edges held whispered secrets, faces blurred by time invited questions too heavy to voice aloud. His thoughts circled, relentless, returning to the parted family questions and betrayals he'd uncovered recently. Each revelation hit like sharp stones beneath barefoot, tearing at the fragile foundation of identity he had once thought solid. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, a creak from the hallway, caught his attention. He turned, head barely lifting, eyes hollow but alert. The apartment was empty, no footsteps answered. Even the city beyond seemed muted beneath the oppressive fog. His voice broke the silence, barely a whisper. What's left when the ones we trusted become strangers? The question hung, unanswered, dissolving into the cavernous quiet. The shivering metallic glint from the watch caught one last flicker of light before plunging into shadow. It lay broken, a timepiece betrayed by its own mechanism, much like the ties that once bound Ethan to kin and past. He closed his eyes tightly, willing the storm within to dull. His body slumped further, the weight of solitude folding him into near nothingness. The room seemed to shrink, the walls converging in cold embrace, whispering of endings. A ragged breath fluttered from his lips, the last fragile breath of resistance faltered. Outside, distant thunder murmured beneath a sky thick with rolling clouds, as if the heavens wept with him. Stillness grew heavy, the quiet absolute. And in that silent abyss, Ethan hovered on the edge, drifting between fading courage and the abyss of surrender. The atmosphere in the dim room was thick with shadows, the feeble light of a single desk lamp painting soft pools of amber on scattered papers and dust-coated shelves. Ethan sat motionless, his silhouette hunched over an ancient, flickering television monitor where grainy images flickered with the hesitant rhythm of past regrets. The screen showed a home movie, his father, younger and vulnerable, speaking quietly in a voice that carried a tremor of love, sorrow, and unspoken apologies. The quiet crackle of static was a fragile bridge stretching across time, linking the past with a present heavy with loss. Ethan's eyes, glassy and weary, tracked the subtle shift in his father's expression. A fleeting glance towards the camera, a hesitant smile filled with remorse, the kind that could not be undone, only understood. He closed his eyes for a moment, the raw weight of years pressing close, the misery of fractured memories suffocating in a silence thick as fog. Then, with trembling fingers, he reached for the tarnished medallion resting on the table beside the monitor. The metal was rough, bearing the scars of time, the emblem of legacy, burden, and the fragility of hope. The room seemed to hold its breath as Ethan clasped the medallion tightly, a lifeline to that distant love buried beneath layers of secrecy and pain. His lips parted softly, barely a whisper, "I see you." Outside, the night wrapped the house in a cloak of chill and quiet, the distant hoot of an owl sounding like a lamentation carried on the wind. The tapes flickered, winding deeper into the folds of Historia, concealed family meeting, voices muted but laden with tension and regret. Shadows moved in the background, faces masked by time's cruel erosion. Ethan's throat tightened, tears unspooling silently as the pieces of the fractured story merged in painful clarity. Betrayal was not just a fracture of trust. It was an inheritance, a complex weave of love and silence that he must now unravel. The room absorbed his quiet despair, yet in that same darkness flickered the faintest ember, a spark of understanding, fragile as the photo that had first beckoned him into this labyrinth. It was a truth, messy and raw, challenging and incomplete, but it was his to hold. His fingers lingered on the medallion, the cold metal grounding him amid the storm of revelations. The possibility of reconciliation shimmered just beyond the edges of grief, fragile yet undeniable. The worn faces on the screen faded as the tape whined to a halt, plunging the room into a silence that felt taut with potential. Ethan remained still, the air thick with what had been lost and what might still be found. A faint breeze stirred the curtains, guiding a sliver of pale moonlight across the desk, illuminating the medallion with a gentle glow. The light felt like a whispered promisey, fragile beacon beckoning him beyond despair toward the dawn of truth. Ethan's breath steadied, his eyes opening with a flicker of resolve rekindled. The path before him remained uncertain, shadowed by pain and unanswered questions, but for the first time in long hours, the journey seemed possible again. Within the silence, beneath the fragile light, he made a quiet vow to follow the fragments wherever they led, to face the darkness entwined in his family's legacy, and to find the path toward healing. The room held its stillness, a canvas for new beginnings framed within shadows and light, the eternal dance of loss and hope, laying the groundwork for transformation yet to come. The first light of dawn seeped through the broken shutters of the estate's grand hall, casting a warm, amber glow across the dust-laden air. Shadows retreated reluctantly as the sun's rays touched the fractured walls, illuminating fragments of a life once buried beneath years of silence and secrets. Ethan, standing at the threshold of a reawakened chapter, gazed out over the sprawling estate gardens. The air was thick with a scent of damp earth and awakening flora, an unfamiliar yet soothing fragrance of renewal. He moved slowly, the weight of recent revelations pressing less heavily on his shoulders. The dark, brooding silences that had defined his despair now felt like a fragile outline, waiting for the first brushstrokes of hope. His eyes, formerly dulled by grief, now flickered with a cautious light, knowing that change was tentative but real. The estate's grandeur was faded, its beauty buried under neglect, yet beneath the layer of decay, the landscape hinted at rebirth. Wildflowers peeked through the cracks in the stone pathways, their colors soft but persistent, defiant in the face of time's erosion. Ethan knelt briefly on the cool grass, fingers extending to graze the vibrant petals, a small act of tenderness toward the promise of new beginnings. In the quiet, a faint sound, a leaf breaking from a branch, became a whisper of life amid death. He turned, eyes lingering on the now open windows that framed a garden bathed in golden light, a transitional space between despair and hope. With a deep breath, Ethan straightened, the faintest smile curling at his lips, a recognition that the shadows of betrayal and grief still lingered but no longer had the final word. The past was a tangled web of pain and love, secrets and sacrifices. Embodying both the weight and the possibility of transformation, he took a tentative step forward. The textures around him, raw stone, cracked wood, blooming life, mirrored his internal shift. The fractured yet resilient landscape of the estate was emblematic of his own fractured soul, gradually mending, inch by fragile inch. He reached into his pocket and retrieved the worn, faded letter, the last gift from his Fethera, message of love and regret penned in a handwriting trembling with emotion. As he unfolded it, the words seemed to shimmer in the morning light, a luminous promise that hope, no matter how teetering or fragile, remained alive. A gentle gust of wind stirred the leaves, scattering their gold across the stone path. Ethan's gaze softened as he took in the sweeping view. The estate's lush, untamed beauty contrasted with the ruins of its former self. The scene was a metaphor, destruction and renewal, intertwined, inseparable. He paused, breathing in the truth of this moment. Change was still incomplete, and wounds of betrayal still ached beneath the surface, but the dawn whispered promises of reconciliation, of healing, of forgiving not just others, but himself. In the distance, the estate's garden shimmered as the sunlight deepened, casting a golden glow that seemed to promise rebirth. Ethan lifted the letter to his chest, feeling the gentle heartbeat of hope awakening. The shadows receded, replaced by the tender promise of possibility. With a slow, deliberate step, he moved toward the estate's labyrinth of overgrown paths, each footfall an act of trust in the dawn's quiet promise. The landscape stretched before him, still scarred, yet ripe with the potential for renewal. The sky brightened, the horizon blending warm hues into the sturdy, broken stone. As he walked, the silhouette of the estate faded into a tapestry of colors: muddy earth, blooming life, shadows and light merging into a scene of delicate rebirth. Ethan's figure, small yet resolute, became a symbol of hope reborn and the start of a journey toward a future he was just beginning to grasp. The dust of the estate's grand hall settled in the silence, broken only by Ethan's steady breath and the faint rustling of aged paper from the shadows. In the dim, flickering light, he stood upright, a newfound resolve coursing through him. The revelation of his father's secret sabbaticals and hidden connections had shattered the last illusions of clarity, but in the wreckage, a spark of purpose ignited. He took a deliberate step forward, each movement measured yet confident. The fragility of the moment shimmered like dawn breaking over a storm-racked sea, uncertain but undeniably real. His hand brushed against a leather-bound journal-on artifact of his father's hidden past, and with renewed strength, he opened it, juices of old fears and hope flowing together. The pages revealed not only a man's solitude, but also a story of long-suppressed love, sacrifices, and choices that had been buried beneath familial silence. Ethan's eyes lingered on a faded photograph glued into the corner, a snapshot of his father in a foreign land, a woman's face barely visible, yet teeming with unspoken history. As he traced the image with trembling fingers, a sudden gust of wind blew through the cracked window, scattering loose pages and shifting the shadows. The estate's dilapidated grandeur seemed to breathe in rhythm with his awakening, the walls whispering truths that had long been muffled. This is our story," Ethan whispered, voice thick with emotion. He knew the path ahead was clouded in uncertainty, but the weight of betrayal, loss, and silence had begun to lift. The truth was complex and imperfect, like the estate itself, scarred but resilient. His gaze lifted to the expanse beyond the shattered windows, where the light was slowly spilling in, brightening the shadows that had haunted him. A tear traced a streak down his cheek, yet his expression was steady, filled with the quiet strength of a man reclaiming his narrative. In that moment, Ethan felt the fractured pieces of his identity coalesce, the broken hours and hidden secrets weaving into a tapestry of understanding and acceptance. The estate, once a relic of loss, now stood as a monument to resiliency, a testament to the power of truth and forgiveness. The scene lingering there was one of silent AWEA landscape bathed in the gentle glow of dawn, the lush garden awakening from its long slumber. Ethan, standing tall amidst the decay, held the leather journal close, pressing it to his heart as if to seal the moment of profound rebirth. The camera pulled back slowly, capturing his silhouette against the shifting light, the estate cradling him in its silent embrace. The rising sun cast a luminous streak across the sky, a celestial ribbon of hope unfurling after darkness, an image of peace in the making, a soul forever changed by the truth he now carried within. Sunlight poured through the broken windows of the estate's grand hall, casting long, golden beams that ignited the dust motes into shimmering particles of hope. Ethan stood tall amidst the decay, the heavy shadows of betrayal and grief receding into the subdued corners of the room. In his hand, the faded letter, the last remnants of his father's voice, glowed softly in the dawn's light, now a symbol of truth and reconciliation. His face, once shadowed by doubt and sorrow, bore a calm strength. The lines of cynicism had softened, the weight of secrets had lifted. Every scar on his soul now gleamed faintly with the possibility of renewal, a testament to the power of truth and forgiveness. The estate, once a relic of pain, stood bathed in the majestic glow of early morning, as if reborn alongside him. Ethan's eyes traced the intricate carvings on the aged walls, each detail whispering tales of love, loss, and sacrifice, families fractured and mended across generations. He moved toward a worn wooden table where remnants of his father's life lay, scattered photos, journals, personal artifacts, all illuminated with the gentle promise of a new beginning. In that quiet moment, he lifted the letter to his chest, feeling its weight settle over his heart. The words, faint but meaningfully inscribed, spoke of love unconditionally given, of regret kept hidden for too long, and of hope rekindled through understanding. Tears welled up and spilled silently, but this time, they carried a different message, one of acceptance and peace. The once darkened space was now awash with a warm, amber glow, as if the sun itself had stepped in to light his path forward. Ethan's shoulders straightened, every breath affirming a profound internal shift. The shadows of the past lingered but no longer defined his future. Here, amid the ruins and relics, he had found his truth, fragile yet unbreakable. He turned slowly, allowing the light to caress his face, revealing a gaze filled with purpose and clarity. The estate's lush gardens beckoned beyond the shattered glass, vibrant and alive despite the scars of history. With measured grace, Ethan moved toward the open door, each step a deliberate act of courage and hope. As he stepped into the soft embrace of morning, the camera pulled back, revealing the estate bathed in the glow of dawn, an enduring symbol of rebirth. Ethan's silhouette, calm and resolute, was framed against a sky painted with the promise of a new beginning. The scene lingered on this image of quiet triumph, the culmination of loss turned into strength, darkness transformed into dawn, and a life once shadowed by secrets now illuminated by truth. The early morning light poured softly through the tall, broken windows of the estate's lush garden, casting a gentle glow over the wildflowers and tangled vines that had reclaimed the grounds. Ethan stood amidst the overgrown beauty, the silence enveloping him like a sacred embrace. In his hand, he held the crumpled, handwritten letter from his father, faded yet steady, filled with words that echoed love, regret, and forgiveness. The air was cool and fragrant with the scent of blooming jasmine and damp earth, a stark contrast to the turmoil that once clouded his heart. As dawn's light awakened the blossoms, Ethan's face relaxed into a calm he hadn't known in months. The years of searching, the pain of betrayal, and the burden of secrets had carved deep scars. Now, in this quiet moment, they seemed to soften, replaced by a fragile understanding. He traced the delicate script with trembling fingers, feeling the weight of the words, each one a balm, offering solace and reconciliation. The letter was a testament to imperfect love, a plea for forgiveness for the silence and omissions that had divided them. Ethan's eyes, once filled with suspicion and doubt, now shimmered with a gentle, almost reverent emotion. A slow breath escaped him, drawing in the dawn's serenity. He closed his eyes briefly, allowing memories of his father, his laughter, his regrets, his silent sacrifices to wash over him like waves caressing a weathered shore. The chaos of discovery had armored him against the past, yet in this stillness, he finally felt its weight lift. Amid the tranquility, the sprawling estate seemed to breathe anew, its scars visible but its spirit resilient. The broken stone pathways, adorned with wildflowers, led to a small pond where the morning sun shimmered across ripples, each one a reminder that truth, like water, finds its way through cracks and barriers to surface. Ethan slowly lowered himself onto a weathered bench, gazing out over the awakening scenery. The sky, painted in pastel hues of pink and gold, promised a new beginning, one built not on secrets and shadows, but on acceptance and hope. The tension that had once constricted his chest loosened, replaced by a calm conviction that his journey, though fraught with pain, had led him to a place of peace. For the first time in a long while, he felt the gentle warmth of belonging, not in the completion of what was lost but in the quiet acknowledgement that what mattered most was the truth he now carried within. The estate's lush garden, once a symbol of betrayal, now shimmered as a sanctuary, a testament to resilience and renewal. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden glow over the tangled branches and flowering hedges, Ethan rose slowly. His shoulders, once bowed by the weight of secrets, now carried a lightness on acceptance that shimmered like dew in the morning sun. He turned, allowing his gaze to linger on the estate's splendor, a quiet smile touching his lips. The past still whispered softly in the rustling leaves, but its voice no longer dictated his future. The garden held his silent promise to cherish the truth and embrace the quiet beauty of a new beginning. With a final gentle look, Ethan moved toward the estate's main house, each step a deliberate act of peace and hope. The scene faded into the gentle glow of dawn, symbolic of rebirth, a soul finally at rest amid the tender promise of the new day. The dawn stretched across the estate with hesitant grace, painting the overgrown garden in hues of gentle gold and blush, as if nature herself paused in silent homage. Ethan stood beneath an ancient oak, its limbs reaching skyward like outstretched arms welcoming a new chapter. In his hands, the crumpled letter from his father felt lighter, its weight a mere whisper in the early morning breeze. He traced the inked words simple, sincere, imbued with a love long hidden in shadows but now illuminated by the soft light of understanding. The letter's message was an apology, a confession of missed moments and unspoken bonds, wrapped in the language of forgiveness. I was afraid of the past, of what I might lose. But I see now, love is the only true inheritance. It's never too late to start anew. Ethan's eyes shimmered with quiet tears, not of despair but of release. The scars of betrayal and grief, once etched deep like the roots of the old oak, now softened, intertwined with the growth and resilience within him. The estate, long a symbol of secrets and fractured legacy, shimmered with a newfound vitality, as if awakening from slumber. He lowered his gaze to the lush ground, vivid wildflowers sprouting defiantly among the debris. The broken watches scattered nearby lay silent, their fractured faces gleaming momentarily in the rising sun, a poignant reminder that even lost time could give way to healing. Quietly, Ethan stroked the gnarled trunk of the oak, feeling the rough bark, yet resilient. In that gesture, he forged an unspoken promise, sealing his acceptance of the past, his forgiveness of the pain, and his readiness for hope. The dark clouds had dispersed, revealing a sky awash with warm, orange waves, a canvas of transformation. He breathed deeply, holding the moment and the promise it carried. The estate was no longer a relic of betrayal but a sanctuary of renewal. The shadows of old wounds had begun to lift, replaced by the gentle caress of understanding and forgiveness. Turning slowly, Ethan faced the house that had once been a fortress of silence, now bathed in the golden glow of morning. The windows, dusty and fractured, reflected the rising sun, mirroring his internal awakening. A slow, deliberate smile crept across his face, a smile of reconciliation, of hope reborn. He stepped forward, each movement purposeful, the shadows retreating behind him like faded memories. The garden, lush and alive, whispered of possibilities of new stories and rebuilt bonds. Ethan's silhouette dissolved into the light, a figure now embodying peace and resilience. In that quiet moment of acceptance, the scene lingered, the estate standing as a testament to transformation and the enduring power of love. The camera pulled away, capturing Ethan's peaceful figure against the vibrant dawn, an everlasting symbol of healing, of new beginnings rooted in the truths he had uncovered and embraced. The morning unfolded in a tapestry of serene hues, the sky ablaze with soft oranges and delicate pinks, casting a gentle glow over the estate's neglected gardens. Ethan stood beneath the legacy of an unspoken past, now transformed into a silent sanctuary of peace. The ancient oak, where he'd once seen only shadows and secrets, now stretched its gnarled branches skyward, welcoming the dawn of a new chapter. In his hands, he held the letter, his father's words, faded but resolute, inscribed with love and remorse. The paper trembled slightly in the cool breeze, but Ethan's grip was steady, his heart finally at rest. With each inhale, the heavy ghosts of betrayal, grief, and frustration loosened their grip, replaced by a quiet understanding. He traced the faint ink with a gentle finger, feeling the weight of forgiveness settle into the marrow of his bones. Every scar across his soul, once raw with pain, now gleamed softly like the morning dew, reminders of wounds healed, truths embraced. The estate's overgrown beauty whispered of rebirth. Wildflowers, vivid and untamed, clung to the cracked stone paths, their colors echoing hope's silent promise. The broken watches, scattered along the route's tangled surface, reflected the fleeting nature of time, no longer a thief but a witness to resilience. Ethan lifted his gaze toward the horizon, where the first light illuminated the sprawling sky, spilling warmth across the leaves and stones. A gentle wind stirred the air, carrying a faint, almost inaudible chorus, the rustling of hope, of acceptance, of peace reborn. He stepped forward slowly, each movement deliberate. The chaos that had once defined his search, the betrayals, the secrets, the grief, faded into a distant murmur, replaced by the soft melody of reconciliation. The garden responded in kind, blossoming quietly into life, the scent of fresh growth mingling with the cool, dewy earth. In that stillness, Ethan's silhouette merged with the dawn's gentle glow, a symbol of transformation. The shadows retreated, not erased but transformed into a backdrop for resilience and hope. The estate's ancient stones, once silent witnesses to fractured history, now stood as silent sentinels of peace. The camera lingered, capturing the serenity, the quiet, profound moment when truth and forgiveness finally found their place within his heart. The scene dissolved into the delicate silence of dawn, a timeless pause on a life forever changed, a quiet testament to the power of acceptance, love, and the enduring spirit of renewal. What secrets would you want revealed about your family? Share your thoughts below.